Let's chant, who tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine.
Tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine. Who tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine. Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Who tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine? Who tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine? Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Who tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine? Who tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine? Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Who tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine? Who tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine? Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Thousands of suns and moons from thy body do shine. Who tells me thou art dark, O my mother divine?
And door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee.
Open wide for thee, door of my heart. Open wide for thee. Wilt thou come? Wilt thou come? just for once come to me. Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? My days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Oh, my heart, open wide I do for thee. Oh, my heart, open wide I do for thee. Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee night and day. Night and day, I look for thee night and day. And day, night and day, I look for thee night and day.
Please join me in prayer. O Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, beloved Jesus Christ, blessed Master, dearest Mother, saints and sages of all religions, I bow to all of you. Free my life from all obstacles, and give me physical, mental, and spiritual development.
Make
my mind thy temple.
Make my mind thy temple.
Make my heart thy altar.
Make my heart thy altar.
Make my love thy home.
Make my love thy home.
Be thou the only King.
Be thou the only King.
Reigning on the throne of my consciousness.
Reigning on the throne of my consciousness.
Peace, peaceless.
Amen.
Lovely to be here. Yesterday, of course, was Master's birthday. Intended to get the posting out yesterday, but it's a busy day, and I didn't get out until about a little after midnight last night. So, what a blessed occasion to be focused on our dear Param Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. Master was born on January 5th, and thus we and the world were blessed. Sometimes in our rush to heap accolades upon such a great soul, there's a tendency, especially with a spiritual master, to discount his humanness. This, even though the master, especially rare for the times in which he was writing, gives many detailed glimpses into the workings of his humanity. Master writes of petitioning God for a revelation, and his tears flow in anguish for a divine response. This is not the cool calm of a meditating yogi, but a tremendous depth of feeling for God that many can relate to. Being a bhakta, Master had a powerful emotional life in his early days, and could be subject to moods. Sri Yukteswarji worked on his disciple to rise above such moods. To have true self-mastery, the influence of moods must be conquered. Only emotions directed towards knowing God are cultivated. After a grave disappointment by someone close to Master, he actually thought of returning to India, having been in America for just a few years. He took time to go to Mexico, where he thoroughly enjoyed the people. Master was obviously questioning much of the work he had done here in America, and this was a time of serious doubt. During this uncertainty, Divine Mother told Master he should stay and continue his work here. It changed not only his life, but our lives as well. If Master had left, Mother's life would have been completely different. With Mother's life so altered, our lives would have been radically changed from how they currently are. It all seemed to hang by a thread, but thankfully, Master kept his mind on God and fully surrendered to Divine Mother's will. We can imagine that Master was above everything, not affected by what came at him. And there was plenty that did come his way. But the notion that he was above it all would take away from his tremendous accomplishments. True, God could lift him above the tumult of life, but divine will ordains for many spiritual masters to be subject to the vicissitudes of life in order to demonstrate how to move through life's many problems, to be an example for keeping the focus of attention on God throughout it all. Out when friends betray you and the world mounts a campaign against you, you can find, even as Master found, the inner strength to go on. It is through such self-mastery that you learn about your own potential, and to deny a spiritual master's humanity is to negate one of his greatest lessons to you. Just the fact that Master was born into a family with siblings, a regimented father, and a compassionate mother began a human play that surrounded Master with love and support, as well as many challenges along the way, just as in all families. His desire for freedom and God made school seem slow and plodding. He disappointed his father by not joining the train business. Instead, he founded a school based upon ancient yogic principles that also incorporated modern education. Master left India, a rarity in his day, to come to the West to bring the message of liberating yoga. Many came to hear his talks. A few stayed to really follow his teachings, and of those, a very few devoted their lives to realizing the great truths Master came to bring, and fewer yet fulfilled the ultimate goal, union with God. Disappointment in those who could not or would not follow the teachings was part of the human cost for Master. He was born into and lived a human life, and Master most notably attained divine liberation. As such, his birth is truly worthy of celebration. Through his words, music, poetry, and his magnificent example, he continues to teach us about this universal yoga, or union with God. Through his song of vibrations, he is actively lifting up all attuned souls into higher consciousness, so that struggling aspirants may become what he is, one with God. Joe recently told me about a book about Master I was unaware of before. It's a short book. You can get it online. You can either read it as a PDF or you can buy it. I think it's $3 on Amazon. And it's entitled, I Became My Heart, Stories of a Disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. And the man is Leo Cox. He recorded his experiences with Master, and then later they were written down in book form. This is entitled Leo Meets His Guru. I always had an interest in philosophy. I grew up in San Jose, California, and my family started going to Vedanta Temple in San Francisco. In 3 years of study of Vedanta, I learned about Ramakrishna, reincarnation, and the masters and saints. Later, I went to Navy boot camp in San Diego and applied to sonar school. While in San Diego, I received a letter from my mother telling me about 2 friends of hers who were originally from Encinitas area. They moved to San Jose, met my mother, and they told her about Yogananda and self-realization. They told my mother to write me and suggested I check out Yogananda. They told her I could find out what I thought about it. My mother then told me, so I received all this secondhand. On Sunday, October 17, 1948, I went to San Diego Church or Temple. I'd never seen Yogananda before. I'd never read a book or heard a lecture of his. I knew absolutely nothing about him. I was sitting there about 3/4 back in the front of the church. He came out and we stood up. He prayed, he chanted, and then he had a little talk before the meditation. As soon as he did that, it was just like everything opened up. I became my heart. My chest opened up. My heart had wings and I flew out of my body about 8 or 10 feet. I could see him and I instantly felt, oh, he is my guru. He is my guru. And I thought, oh, at last I found him again. That was when I knew he was an avatar. That feeling of expansion lasted for quite a while. And then I came back to normal. After the service, I saw that there were people going up to him and getting blessed. I got in line. He blessed me and asked me about myself. I talked a little bit, but it was hard to talk because I was all choked up. He said, I want you to follow my teachings. He then told me, I want you to write me. I couldn't figure out that one. Why does he want me to write him? I'm going to see him every week. San Diego Church 1 week and Hollywood the next. Why do I have to write him? But he saw it differently, I guess. Standing there with Master was the future brother Bhaktananda. At that time, his name was Michael. Master said to Michael, you help Leo. Afterwards, you go in back with the teachings and the books and things. So Michael and I went to the back of the chapel and he pointed out each one of the books. He showed me the lessons. I just said, that's great, give me everything. I signed up for lessons and I bought a copy of all the books Master had at that time. Master must have thought, this guy is crazy. I didn't know I was going to need everything because as it turned out, I wasn't going to see Master again for a long time. I was immediately transferred to Florida to go to sonar school. But he knew all that before I did. I was blessed to have my mother and stepfather, the Andersons, and my brother Ivan on the path with me. Master would write to them also. My mother would share his letters with me by hand copying them and sending them to me. This one dated August 8, 1949. Dear Mrs. Anderson, thank you for your 2 recent letters, which reflect so dearly that wonderful love and devotion for God, which I have always seen in you. I feel that Ivan's decision to go ahead is a big step forward, and I have complete faith that if he will continue and see it through, always inwardly relying on the Father, he will see a gradual improvement. He was suffering and continued to suffer with a mental illness for some time. 2 seemingly opposing factors are necessary: the will to overcome and the ability to place oneself in God's hands, devotedly, completely, trustingly. I shall be looking forward to hearing how things are going with Ivan, and I assure you both that I have deeply and unceasingly prayed to the Heavenly Father to inspire strength and guide Ivan according to his receptivity. No matter how thick the dust of ignorance collected through the incarnations, the shining surface of the soul cannot be obscured forever. but sooner or later be revealed in the blazing light of God. It is up to us, with the help of God and gurus, to take the necessary steps. I enjoyed reading your letter, and to young blank, please tell him when you write that I have not forgotten him, and convey to him my personal good wishes and blessings. Thank you, too, for closing Leo's letter. I had a letter from him very recently, and I am pleased with his progress in every way. Those who have the devotion and willingness to strive for God will reach him. Please give him my love again when you write, and also send my love and blessings to Ivan. I hope to write to him soon, and will be happy to hear from him at any time he cares to write. Please let him know whenever I can be of help. Please let me know about the taxes with the property. I will write more about the land when I hear from you. Is it a healthy place? Could we develop a colony there? With all my blessings for your divine thought, very sincerely, P. Yogananda. P.S. Our colonies are springing up everywhere. P.Y. And this one dated October 7th, 1949. I thought you'd enjoy hearing these letters. Dear Ivan, thank you for your informative letter written in September. I have been extremely busy with accounts for this delay in replying to same. I am pleased to learn that you are striving to meditate to the best of your ability every night. Remember, never go to bed until the peace and joy of his presence permeates the depths of your soul. God demands 100% loyalty and devotion from those who yearn for the conscious realization of his presence. He is not satisfied with only a portion of your attention and devotion, but waits behind the screen of life until we consent to give our all to him through steadfast intent upon the goal. It is finally attained. Whose heart is filled with satisfaction by wisdom and realization, and is changeless, whose senses are conquered, and to whom a lump of earth, stone, and gold are the same, that yogi is called steadfast. That is a quote from the Gita. I'm glad that you are writing regularly. Your idea about recording the poem, God, 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 is an excellent one. Perhaps it will be possible to do this at some future time. Of course, Master was able to do that, calling it God, Christ, Gurus. Be assured of my daily prayers that you may progress physically, mentally, and spiritually. Unceasing blessings. Very sincerely yours, P. Yogananda. A blessed vision. I was in Florida, this is Leo again, as the 1948 Christmas holiday approached. At Christmas time, I was feeling bad because I could see nothing that seemed to celebrate the true spirit of Christmas. It seemed everywhere I turned, there was nothing but drunken revelry. I went to the beach one night to find a peaceful place to meditate. I was feeling the presence of God as the ocean. Even so, I had apparently been judging those who were not celebrating the true spirit of Christmas. As I looked out in the darkness, a wondrous light appeared out over the water. As it drew closer to me, I saw what looked like the spiritual eye. Then I could see the shape of a person in it. As it came still closer, I could see it was the face and body of Christ. Appearing directly to me, he spoke the words of love that were also meant as valuable learning to me. He simply said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Master was appreciative of the biggest and smallest things that were done for him. Sometimes after a blessing of the vision of Christ, Master wrote to me about it. This is, Dear Leo, very pleased to hear from you and to learn of your beautiful experience on 23rd of December, which shows that God hears every soul whisper of the devotee, and that he comes when the devotee cries for him with an urgency of his heart. I cannot tell you what you have done in giving your car to the organization. You have become the instrument of God, fulfilling a great need at the Phoenix Center. It was a most kind gift, given in the true spirit of divine love. I had been trying to locate a second-hand car, but up until that time had been unable to do so. To the vast expense of supporting the 94 people living here and at Encinitas made it difficult to accomplish that at that time. Everyone was jubilant beyond words to see this demonstration from God, which came through you and your mother. It was publicly announced during the Christmas celebration here over the 25th, when over 150 persons were gathered here. I so wished you could have been with us and actually seen the joy of all those divine souls at the demonstration, which came through you. Never has the organization received a car voluntarily donated at such a critical moment. The progress of the work at the Phoenix Center was jeopardized because the leader could not travel the vast differences necessary to visit those in need. God bless you for bringing the answer to his problem in Phoenix through God. All my heart's love and thanks. Certainly the blessings of God will be with you for helping to fulfill this need of spreading the work. Very sincerely yours, P. Yogananda. P.S. I almost forgot to thank you for the lovely birthday card which you sent and for the sentiments expressed therein, which touched me deeply. My deepest pleasure is in knowing good souls who love God and in establishing his temple in their hearts. I feel the depth of your heart and sincerity, and I pray that you may more and more strive to feel the divine presence with you night and day. It is good that you have a little quiet place to go each morning and evening to meditate. Keep up your meditations and the chanting and continue to grow in God. Then November 30th, 1949. Dear Mr. Cox, I was deeply touched by the letter you wrote. It is always my greatest pleasure to help in whatever humble way I can those sincerely seeking souls who desire to find God. It is only because I have been in seclusion the past several weeks that it was impossible for me to reply to your letter sooner. When we first hunger a little to know what life is about, we are led to a book or perhaps a lecture that is helpful to us. As our hunger increases, we may be led to a teacher or given help through friends. And finally, when the hunger is unappeasable, God sends us the Guru, who is one through whom God speaks to us, the one who remains with us eternally, offering unconditional friendship until we find God ourselves. That is why I always honor my Guru, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, and all the great gurus of self-realization. Now, you must remember the old adage, where there is a will, there is a way. If you have positively made up your minds that your only desire is to find the cosmic beloved, then pray unceasingly to him to guide you to the right thing you should do in everything. You must not become discouraged by the disadvantages of your environment, but in a cheerful way, make the best of it. Try to do everything in your power to overcome its worst features. And above all, pray to the Father to release you if that is his will. Even though others around you are materialistic and sensual, you need not be influenced by them. Seek good company, for as my Guru often said, good company is greater than willpower. Be quiet and pleasant yourself, and you will influence others instead of being influenced by them. When others are sleeping, you can pretend to be, but inside, be awake in God. Isn't that beautiful? It's a lovely book. Leo applied for and received permission to leave the Navy early. And then he came and was a monk with Master, and after Master's passing, he left that, and the book didn't go into detail, but he seemed to go through a period of time about 20 years of wandering and getting lost in the world, but eventually came back. And he was a bit of a rough character by the accounts from the book, but you can tell there the devotional nature of his soul. And that master stuck with him. You know, it's a great thing when we come into this world and we find a wonderful teacher. I remember in university having different professors, and when you just sat in class, it felt like your brain was being stimulated with new thoughts and new ideas. And it's a wonderful sensation. And then we get into the world and we have mentors, perhaps, if we are fortunate, and we can pattern or partially pattern our lives after those whom we admire in this world. And so we grow psychologically, we grow as a person in this world. But when our attention turns towards the dissatisfaction with this world, that somehow this world is not enough, there has to be more. Certainly many people live their lives, and they live good lives in this world, and without thinking about anything particularly more. But for some souls, it's just not satisfactory. There's something inside that is spurring us on to a bigger adventure, to more knowledge, more understanding. But there has to be a reason behind all of this. When the Buddha was traveling in the garden and he came across a man who was ill, and then he had never seen that before. And his guide told him that all bodies become ill. And then another one who had turned old with age, and he had never seen that before either, and was told that all people, even princes and kings, will age. And then he came across a third who is dead. And he is told that that too is the ultimate outcome for everybody who lives. It cannot be described how disturbed he became by this, that there wasn't something more about life than just simply eating and drinking and living and then dying. There had to be something more, but he didn't know what that more was, and he didn't find it with the local priests or the rituals that they went through. He didn't know of anyone who had any actual realization. Most people were satisfied to some extent with the lives that they had. And so he left a new baby and a wife who he loved very much. But this was such a disturbing, distressing thought to him that he couldn't let it go. And for 7 years, he went out in search and went through extreme practices, what is called tapasya, going through starving the body and even sometimes putting it through torture in order to rise up above the body. And then it's one day he was sitting by the river as the water flowed by, and he heard a teacher teaching a student about a stringed instrument. And he says, if you tighten the strings too taut, then they are liable to break. And if they are too loose, they don't make the proper sound. You want to get exactly the right tension on each string, and then you'll get the most beautiful music. And this really hit him, that he had been torturing his body, and this is not getting him anywhere. And so he turned within himself. He made his body healthy. But then he made a determination that there was nothing more important than getting this realization, not even life. And so it was then when he surrendered so 100% that he then rose above and he learned who and what he truly was. Mother tells of an interesting experience. And in writing this about Master today, Mother's imprint so much rang true for me, that she was both human and divine. It's a unique teaching, really, because as aspirants, we're so busy oftentimes trying to rise above the things that bother us about ourselves, that limit us, that are not attuned to the divine, that we don't really appreciate the human expression that we have. Or we get so involved with this world that we lose consciousness of God. And so then we grow to despise this humanness because we can't seem to find that balance that the Buddha was talking about, the middle way. And Mother talked about an experience that she went through one time. This comes from a talk that she gave in 1961. It is said that there are two ways of knowing God. You see, in either case, one must get rid of the ego completely, this little self, before the God self can come in and take over. So you can approach this in either one of two ways. You can become nothing, or you can expand your consciousness and find yourself one with God in all of creation. Now, I have tried both of these methods. And for a couple of years, I tried the method of becoming nothing. And so gradually, as the time went on, I recognized that I of myself was nothing. Truly, it was my Father who doeth the works. And as I pursued this idea of nothingness, I even lost my power to remember, to think, to act in the way that I would in an ordinary fashion. And one day I woke up, and it was after I had come to Portland, with the idea that this wasn't getting me any place, that what I was doing was actually killing myself physically, mentally, and spiritually. So while it can be actually done that way, until you come to the point where you are nothing, and then something will happen in that nothingness. You become one with the knowledge of your oneness with God, knowing that the little self has completely disappeared and there is only God there. Or you can expand your consciousness. And I realized that if I were to continue this, that I might be in serious trouble. It might even affect me mentally. And I've gone through many experiences in the astral state, and these powers come many times to tempt us, to tell us that we're going to lose our minds. We're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And we must use our will. We must use our complete faith in the power and the oneness of God, and tell these powers, whatever they might be, to go away and leave us alone. And then forget them, and to fix your full attention upon God. Nobody wants to become a nothing, in the sense that he is going to destroy himself. Because this physical, mental, and spiritual suicide, don't forget them. Now, it can be done occasionally, and some of the masters have done this. But the greatest way, and the easiest way, and the best way, is to expand consciousness until you become one with this consciousness of God. Because then you are alert, you are alive, and you are vitally what you should be in God. You see God in all space. You do not separate yourself from God as you do in this nothing state, because you think of yourself as nothing and God as of all things. You see? But in the other, gradually the consciousness expands, and you start seeing him in the grass, in the leaves of the trees, in the flowers, in all growing things, and in all things animate and inanimate, in all human beings everywhere. And you know that God exists everywhere, that his energy, his eternal consciousness is present in every single atom of space, that it is those things alone which keep this universe moving and living in its present form, that it is these things which keep us going at all times. We must have a purpose in life. We cannot just be a nothing. We must have a purpose. We must realize that we are put here for this one purpose, and that it is to find our oneness with God. But while we are doing it, to serve him in all humanity. Now, we may serve no matter what we do. It is that you have your consciousness upon God. If you're scrubbing a floor or washing dishes, or if you are out selling, if you are working with machinery, if you are serving the public, it doesn't make any difference. Know that this job that I am doing for God, I am serving him. I am doing something. In the experiences that God has put me through, he put me through a period of time when I was in the nothingness of God. I couldn't feel anything inside of me. There were no thoughts in my mind. And I just subsisted like a machine in the sense that I was going about doing things in this world, but it felt like it was on automatic pilot. But inside, I didn't feel any motivation. I didn't feel anything at all. And at one time, somebody who's close to me said, "I feel like you're dead." And out of my mouth came, "I am." And it just was something that I was being taken through. And this is the nothingness of God. You know, Jesus said, you take an old wineskin and you pour new wine into it, and it'll burst the seams of the old wineskin. You need a new wineskin to put the new wine into it. And this is describing this experiences. In the beginning, you start to disassemble all the things of your personality. It's not you who's doing it, it's God through the experience. We just simply put our attention on God. And then God will take us through whatever we need to go through. But we keep it positive in the sense that we're always aspiring for a higher goal. To try to make your mind empty, to try to make yourself nothing, is not an effective way to get to the goal. There are a few, as Mother said, who are able to do this, but it's a very strenuous way to go. As Master, as Papa, as Mother, all advocated the way of the bhakti. The bhakti positively aspires for higher consciousness, for devotion to God, for service to humanity. You fill your life with activity, but you feel that it is God who is doing it through you, and in this way, you are emptied out of your old self. You don't think and anticipate what are you going to get out of doing something. If you do some service for somebody, oh, people are going to think so nicely about me. They're going to think I'm a grand fellow. And this is the very thing that keeps you bound. I remember there's a man who had been the richest man in the world, and he set up a foundation, and people were still finding fault with him for the way that he made his money. And he says, what do I have to do to change people's minds, you see? He had the motivation that if he did good things, the people would begin to like him. It is a tyranny of others in our life that keeps us bound. What does this person think of me? What does that person think of me? Will they think that I'm doing a good thing, the right thing? Will they love me? Will they have positive regard for me? All of these things make us bound to what other people think. And many times, it is the person that we respect the least that we feel most tyrannized about. And so we have to break free of them. We have to go deep inside of ourselves and find out who I am. That is the key, because it's not about becoming someone else or acting according to somebody else's expectations. It's really becoming your true self. God realization is not becoming somebody else completely. It's really becoming your true self, who you have always been. You feel that way as you grow into it. And so you do leave behind some of the old parts of your life. But they're the parts that didn't work. They're the parts that didn't really fit you. They're the parts that you were living out other people's expectations. Now, this is one of the most difficult things that I've had to do in my life, because I was highly attuned to what other people thought of me. And I wanted to get along with other people. I didn't want them to think badly of me. Now, there's a certain positive aspect of this at a time in our lives. We respect what other people think and what other people say. But ultimately, we have to let all of that go. What do I think about this? And more importantly, what does God inside of me think about this? To know that, we must become quiet. We must become still. We must go beyond what other people think about us. Master one time said that even if the whole world were to turn against him, but he felt that God was guiding him, he would do what God guided him to do. And that's quite a thing, isn't it? The Hearst publishing empire, for some reason, took a turn against Master. And they published a lot of articles that were negative about him. Now, I don't know if it was because he was a Hindu in a Christian country or what the problem was. Maybe racial, I don't know. But it was difficult. It's difficult when you have people that turn against you that way. I was working at a place one time, and one of the other workers there decided to make it their job to destroy me professionally. And they decided that any means would do. So they made up things, they manufactured lies and started circulating them. And I was very fortunate that I had my direct supervisor was very strongly supportive of me. Or that person would have very likely been successful in their venture. And it went on for quite some time, almost a year. And finally I transferred and I went to another location. But it can really be something when somebody takes a dislike to you for nothing that you're aware of that you've done to them. So we have to rise above all of that. We have to know who we are, separately from what the world thinks of us. Papa had the minister who was there, he's a Methodist minister, who was there at the same time that Mother was there at an ashram. And he felt God prompting him to go up on the hill that they called Snake Hill, just behind the ashram. And he was going to go up there and he was going to meditate until he had some experience in God. And he felt this very powerfully. And so he only told Mother. And up the hill he went. And Papa became quite disturbed that this man was missing. So he sent some of the boys out up on the hill looking for him. They couldn't find him. And then Papa turned to Mother and said, Mother, do you know where this man is? And Mother said, yes, but he asked me not to tell you. And he said, is he up by a certain place, which is where he's actually at? And Mother said, well, perhaps. She wasn't going to say. And so Papa went up, and then Papa didn't go up, but he sent people up there and said, Papa wants you to come back down. And they went up once, they went up twice, they went up 3 times. And he refused the first 2 times. And the third time he said, well, since Papa's being so insistent, then I'll come down. And he did. And later Mother was talking with Papa. And it became clear to her that Papa had been testing this man. And that he had actually thought it was better if he stayed up there and he meditated until he had the God experience he was yearning for. Isn't that strange? You think, well, the Guru is supposed to guide you, but in this case, the Guru can test you as well, because this Methodist minister felt that Papa was his Guru. So this is a very interesting thing, to go beyond what other people think of you, to go beyond what the world gauges as to be the right thing. I have been prompted to do what by worldly standards and even by spiritual standards might be considered the wrong thing to do. And yet I felt with everything inside of me that this is what I should do. And so I had to do it, and I came under my share of criticism for it. But you have to go according to how you feel you are to do. Now it is on our part to do everything in our power to be guided according to the highest light that we know, not just be responding to what the ego wants inside of us. And how do we know the difference? It can be very difficult at times. But there is a very definite signature of God's will and God's presence that comes to you. You feel that it is more than you. You feel that it is above you. It has a purity to it. It has a stillness to it. It's not driven by anger or by passion or by the other kinds of things that can drive us to action. It comes from that inner stillness, that inner knowingness. And we just simply know this is true. And it resounds through every cell of our being. It is important that we hold ourselves to those standards. And it is important that we learn to identify that when it comes. And we know it. You know it. But there can come times when you feel like, there's something here, I think I should be doing this. But there perhaps is a little bit of doubt, or you feel, no, this is the right thing to do. And once you set off down that path, you start to feel it many times in your solar plexus. And it feels wrong to you. You know that it's not right. One thing that I've done many times is I've mentally placed all the masters all around me. From Mother and Master and Sri Yukteswarji, Larry Mahasaya, Babaji, Papa, Mataji, Swamiji. And they surround me. And I say, okay, here's what I'm considering. This is what I think is the highest light. What do you think? And I would go from one to the other, looking them in the eye. And many times it was one of them, and I would just know what I was thinking was the wrong thing. Are we willing to do what we know to be the highest thing? Now, sometimes it destroys our dreams of what we think we would like out of life. Sometimes it makes us go against tradition. And yet, if we are to know God, then we have to go according to that inner divine will. This is the most wonderful, the most rewarding, and also the most difficult path that a person can go on. No one in this world may know what you go through. And yet, you know that you are aspiring for the very highest and for the very best. When we look at Mother, when we look at Master, we shouldn't just think, oh, they are above it all. They didn't have to deal with what I have to do. I'm such a lowly worm, and I'm down here groveling in the mud, and they never had to do that. Well, they had their own version of it. It'd be one way or the other. And they had to battle it. You know that they did. They came in a human body, as a human being. And this is the thing that they struggle to overcome. We all have our different Achilles heels. That thing, or maybe those things, that really trouble us, that are difficult. And sometimes we have a difficult time explaining, why is this such a problem for me? And yet we know that it is. We may have some remembrance in this lifetime or another lifetime, why this is such a troubling thing for me. But really, it doesn't make any difference where the source of it comes from. The solution is here and it is now. When you dive into meditation, you touch the hem of the garment of the divine being. By that I mean you feel the upliftment, you feel the purity and the bliss and the joy and the enlightenment that comes with that touch. You know where you're headed for. You know what your life should feel like, should be like. And this sets your course. Now you still live in a body. So you have food, you have entertainment, you have the different things that this life has to offer. There's nothing wrong with any of that as long as it's done with judiciousness. But that you never allow things to interfere between you and your inner path. If something comes between you and God, then you must cut off the other. Jesus very picturesquely and quite severely said, if your hand, offend you, cut it off, or if your eye offend you, pluck it out. Tough love, huh? That's a severe message. But by that, he means when you find something that you just really get obsessed with, and that you lose sight of the divinity within your own being, you must fight it. You must overcome it. It is your test. And you may struggle with it, not just for a day or a week or a month. It may be years. But that you determine within yourself, I will overcome this. I will defeat this. I will rise above this. And if it takes me from now until eternity, I will never give up until I do. And I may fail and fail again, and I will pick myself up and I will keep going. And when you make that kind of determination, you attract invisible forces in to support you and to empower you and to give you the ability to overcome that which is not of God inside of you. Because God is everything that is good, everything that is pure, everything that is uplifting about you. Everything else does not truly belong to you. It is a temporary thing that you are put into. And because we may have lived with it for so long, we can perhaps just start to think, well, that's just me. I'm this way. I'm a nervous person. I'm a fearful person. I'm a passionate person, whatever it is. And yet, if you know it doesn't represent the highest in you, that's not true. It may be powerful. It may have been with you for a very long time. But it is not who you truly are. God being the sole creator of all that is means that everything that is made up of God's stuff, and that includes you. And that seed of purity and light can be buried very deeply inside. And in some people it is. It's overlayered with layers and layers of ego and problems. But when the time is right, when the ground has been prepared, that seed will start to come forth. It'll stretch out tentatively at first. And it needs our encouragement. That is why we meditate. That is why we chant, is to prepare that ground, to make it so that that seed will thrive and grow. And just like the tiny little mustard seed grows into an enormous tree. Think of that tiny little seed, tiny little oak seed, or a seed that comes from a sequoia or a redwood. How tiny that is, how small it is. And then what an enormous structure that grows into. Isn't that amazing? Absolutely amazing. Down by Mount Rainier, there's the Grove of the Patriarchs, and there are these enormous cedars that have grown up by the river down there. And they're really marvelous to be around. And you have such a seed, even a greater seed inside of you. A Christ seed, if you want to say it in that way. A seed of divinity that is ready to sprout and to grow and to become an enormous tree. But we must also learn to be good at husbanding that seed into a mature growth. We have to protect it. We have to nurture it. We have to feed it. We have to weed out other things that would compete and kill it when it's still small and still striving to come into its own. And then eventually, when it grows, it becomes like Master, an enormous tree that helps give shade to others, who provides fruit to those who would pluck it, who gives shelter. We are the beneficiary of these great spiritual beings from ancient times down to modern times. And if we would take advantage of it, it would bring us into our true nature. Isn't that a wonderful, wonderful thing? Today we have a house blessing. One of the things I love about our path is that we are householder yogis. Master was interested in creating these intentional communities, but I've always felt she preferred that people live in their own homes and that they have that privacy and that they not tie everything together in that sense. I think she appreciated having her own privacy, so she appreciated that for others as well. And as Papa said to Mother one time, Mother, you do not have an ashram. They're nothing but a nest of troubles. People think they go to a spiritual community and, everybody's going to be on best of behavior all the time. But the ego just follows us wherever we go. So we establish in our homes. Of course, we live in our homes. So we cook there and we live there and we do all the things that we do in a home. But also we have a spiritual center in our home. And whether it's a chair that you meditate in, whether you can have a room for your meditation. Sometimes people take a closet, make a closet of their little yogi's cave. But we dedicate our home toward having that ability to create a sacred space. And the human and the divine coexist within the home. And when you go into a home where somebody has meditated and lived a spiritual life, oftentimes you feel at the minute you walk in, you feel a certain peacefulness, a certain joy, a certain purity. You know that here lives a lover of God. And so in dedicating a home, I first got the idea when I was at an ashram. And there was a couple who lived there for quite a long time. The woman's name was Tankama, and she worked down at the information, and she was quite a character. And her husband was the librarian, and we called the library the vault, because you would check out a book, and the next day he'd be asking you about it. How are you going to return that book? It's like, I'm sure he lost a lot of valuable books through the years. So we called the library the vault. It's not so easy to get things out there. And they had a new home set up in the block there where Krishnabhai and Satchidananda blocks and Arunachala blocks were. And Swamiji came, Swami Muktananda was there, and there was chanting, and then there was food. And I thought, what a lovely way to inaugurate a new home, to bring that spiritual vibration into it, and to feel that this is a sacred spot, a sacred place. And so that's part of what we're going to be doing here today. This is the house blessing. Let us all pray together. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Friend, beloved God,
Friend, beloved God,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji,
Babaji,
Lahari Mahashai,
Lahiri Mahashai,
Swami Sri Yukteswarji,
Swami Sri Yukteswarji,
Master,
Master,
Mother,
Mother,
saints and sages of all religions,
saints and sages of all religions,
we bow to all of you,
we bow to all of you
in all love and reverence.
in all love and reverence.
May we be filled
May we be filled
with the bliss of thy presence,
with the bliss of thy presence
as we witness this holy ceremony.
as we witness this holy ceremony.
Friends, as we gather here today to invoke God's spirit of power and love and dedicating this home as a temple of God's presence and light. The first temple is to be found in the heart and soul within. This temple then manifests in the home and makes of it a temple. We pray that God and the Masters make this home a temple in which all may feel consecrated. The lighting of this incense represents the sweetness of devotion. May devotion to truth, devotion to light, and devotion to the realization of our oneness with God be in our hearts and in our minds. Like in us, sometimes the light sputters a little bit. The lighting of this candle represents the light of God burning within. If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light, said Jesus the Christ. Let the focus of attention be ever singular upon the star of realization, until the light transforms body, mind, and soul into a flaming light of God. May that light fill this temple home now and always. We offer this red rose and this white rose at the altar of God's feet. The red rose represents God's outward power or nature. The white rose is a symbol of spirit, its truth and omniscience. We pray it will be manifest in all who enter this temple home. Jesus the Christ affirmed the greatest truth when he said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all of thy heart, with all of thy soul, with all of thy mind, and with all of thy strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." Becca, in dedicating your home as a temple means dedicating your life to live this truth. We have come together today in love and prayer that you make the inner temple of your heart and soul and the outer temple of your home a living embodiment of this truth. We enter into this world in order to realize the supreme truth of our oneness with God, the omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent force that has created all. The saints and masters who have realized their oneness with God have assured us that this is the real purpose of being born. In this realization, we become absent of fear and darkness and know ourselves to be free and enlightened beings. In dedicating yourself to this ideal, your home becomes a temple for all who enter therein, be it ever so. I wish for this house to be a lovely presence for all who enter in, and that it supports you in gaining the highest realization. there are others who would like to add their blessings to Rebecca and the home here, this would be a good time to do it.
Well, Rebecca is very lucky to have this space because it's been used many times by you, David, for service. So, and she knows it. She's lucky.
Pre-initiations here, meditations.
Our pre-initiation is where the dining table is now.
Is that right?
Wishing you all God's love and blessing and bliss every moment. I wish that there be for you in your home continual chanting with the new harmonium initiated.
Didn't she play very well?
She was
just
learning.
She's the light of God.
You have to do it every morning. She practices. Gave me the idea that it would be good. She said it would make her nervous, but that she would play today.
Pronounced her. She's great.
Yes.
May the light of God overcome every doubt, every hesitancy, every thought that you might be not good enough, and fill your heart with the radiance that is truly in this space. May it be blessed.
Blessings, blessings, blessings. You have the best neighbors. The home is so beautiful, and it feels so nice and lived in now. Doesn't it?
Just surprised at how it's transformed into kind of what it wants to be, and it's so happy having you.
Thank you, Greg, for making that happen.
You're shining forth through it.
Greg and Jill had a big contribution to this.
Our joy.
I was afraid of the remodel, of changing the space, that it would lose any of its sacred sense. And even taking out the carpet. Like, oh, that sacred carpet. But it is all God, all new, and it really does feel right. The fears were unfounded and kind of
The taken out carpet now lives at Mira's house.
still sacred carpet.
And you're on that.
Yes. Feeling the quiet presence here. Feeling and hearing such a wonderful sound of home. In fact, when we first looked at this house, it was coming down here. I heard the home so tremendously. You'd know that this would be the right house. So space is filled with that, and for all of us to be meditating on that, filling this room, this home, with tremendous power in the Spirit of God. It might vibrate through you, enter into the walls and floors and ceiling. Make it a blessed space. Master wrote the most wonderful poem called Thy Homecoming. The mansion of the heavens is lit by perennial aurora displays of mystic light. The stellar systems swings across endless dark highways of eternity, which lead to thy mystic home. The comet peacocks spread their plumes of rays and dance with wild delight in thy garden of many moons. I sit on the little patch of the Milky Way and watch the glory of thy kingdom spread endlessly everywhere. The festivities of the heavens are dazzling with the fireworks of meteors and meteorites. Shooting stars are hurled across the blue vaults by thine unseen hand of obedient, devoted forces. Everybody, everything, every atom rejoices during thy coronation as the uncrowned King of universes. Every day the trees drop flowers in thine honor, and the sky vase sends wisps of fire mists incense to thee. Candlesticks of heavenly powers hold the burning stars to light thy temple. Meteorites skip, glow, swoon, and fall to the earth mad with thy joy. Planetary dance glides in stately rhythm, awaiting thine homecoming. Because thou hast been away, thy mansion of matter hath been dark. Now, darkness is being dispelled, and thy gloom-drenched chamber of eternity is becoming radiant with the news of thy return. Heavenly lights have opened their gates. Bonfires of nebulous mist are heralding thine approach. The speedy sentinels of sun and moon patiently are waiting for thy homecoming, and I am running wild, dancing in my little body on my little earth, or skimming over the Milky Way, coaxing everything, every atom of space, every speck of consciousness, to open its gates and let thy light shine through completely and drive darkness evermore from the lonesome wilderness of matter. May that light and that running with joy on this little tiny earth be embodied in this home. Now, if you'll pray with me, O Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, I feel the wonder and the beauty of thy glorious presence in every part of my being. My heart is bursting with my love for thee. I kneel in adoration at thy feet. And surrender myself to thee. I feel the power of thy perfection. Surging in every cell of my being. My mind and my intelligence. Are radiant with thy healing light. My mind and my intelligence. Are radiant with thy healing light. My mind and my intelligence. Are radiant with thy healing light. My soul is filled with the ecstasy and bliss. My communion with thee. I and my Father are one. Blessed Spirit, I am He. Peace, bliss, honor. Great light.